great stuff that we've got to look forward to. It's awesome that we're moving into a stage of the movement in which we are, instead of being so defensive, we're being offensive. And that's kind of direction it seems that most of the Tea Party groups are going. So that's exciting stuff. Now, our next speaker, wouldn't it be great to be able to announce that Speaker Louie Gohmert is going to... You know, 2 years ago, there were only a handful of people that voted against Boehner, and this time there was 25 that voted. And so it's great. I remember there was a headline in 2012 after the election that said the House more Tea Party than 2010. So even though there weren't as many seats shifted because we did so many shifts in 2010, we continue to send better and better and better people that have our backs, and we continue to have their backs. And so there was actually some great stuff that happened last week, even though the final result wasn't exactly where we wanted to go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and have Congressman Gohmert come up if he could. It's great to be in your own state, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, that's the kind of reception.
Instead of the state of denial?
Yeah. That's right. But Louie gets that reception all over the country. He definitely is one of the best people that we have in Congress. And the reason why I wanted to bring you up instead of just simply introducing you is because we've pulled a fast one on you. We kind of brought you up here under false pretense. So we are going to give you some time to speak, but before we give you some time to speak, we actually want to take this opportunity to honor you, Congressman, and to thank you for all that you've done.
I got my note.
So what we have lined up for you is we've got this nice seat that you can have a comfortable seat here for a few minutes, because we've got a couple people that are going to speak for a few minutes first that have prepared some messages. So isn't that beautiful stuff?
Comfortable. It's not hot either.
Yeah, we're trying to make climate control.
This doesn't plug in, does it? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Boehner and his people didn't help us at the
good.
So the first speaker I'd like to introduce is Jeff Siddiqui, and he is with the Southeast Texas Tea Party. Jeff, are you? There he is.
No pressure. How's it going, Jeff? Hey, first, I'd like to thank...
Microphone.
First, I'd like to thank Jenny Beth and the whole Tea Party Patriots teams and Maria for putting on these wonderful training and well-organized, and everyone for taking the time to come and dedicated to serving America, try and make things better. So thank everyone for showing up. I'm actually chairman of the Southeast Texas Tea Party. I've been with them for a few years. And I talk funny. I'm actually a fourth-generation Texan, but I talk funny because I grew up in the People's Republic of Washington. So I returned to Texas about 4 years ago to take care of my grandfather, and that's what got me involved with the Tea Party. So it's great to be back, and it's great to be back with Pardon me, I'm not used to using the microphone. Thank you. Reminder. The company, people can tell you a lot about a person without ever knowing them. Representative Gohmert, like Ted Cruz, and the Tea Party are on the hate list for a lot of folks. The Huffington Post, the Daily Kos, MSNBC, Jon Stewart, Steve Colbert, and of course, the Burnt Orange Report. We all know and enjoy the engagement. I think I can say that when we tell our reps, when in doubt, follow Louie Gohmert or Ted Cruz and how to vote. You know you're in some quality company. Don't you all agree? I asked a few of my peers for some stories about, personal stories about Representative Gohmert. I got a couple really neat stories I'd like to share. I think they'll kind of illustrate the kind of person Representative Gohmert is, and why we're so proud to have him support and be able to count him with the Tea Party. I think everyone knows Apostle Claver from RERvideo-Congressman. He actually, we had a little talk the other day, and he had a great story to share, and it's really illustrative of the kind of character we have with Representative Gohmert. He said a few years ago they were in Longview at the town square, and they were both invited speakers there. And apparently it was just, you know how hard it was in Texas? It was just pouring down rain. And they were waiting under the canopy to be introduced and everything. And there were 200 to 300 folks there, Tea Party folks there to listen to the event. And of course the audience was out in the rain as well. You know, they didn't have a canopy. And Claver said that instead of staying under the canopy to give his talk, Representative Gohmert, he apparently was appropriately dressed, and he came out and he stood in the rain with everybody else and talked for about 30 minutes out in that pounding rain. And I was really impressed to hear that. He also said that in 2012, they were in D.C. in the mall near the Washington Monument, and there were, of course, thousands of people there for that event. And of course, it was another rainy day, but Representative Gohmert wasn't violent, and he was out there in the rain doing his part for the Tea Party, so we really appreciate that. Lydia Danwell's one of our steering committee members, and she's been active in Republican circles for quite some time, and she had a little short story to tell too. So in 2012, there was a Tea Party event, and a handful of congressmen participated and spoke of adherence to the Constitution, representing your constituents, and the need to return conservatism, combating Obama's policies, etc. Of course, those who came and spoke with us, only one has been true to his word. And that is Louie Gohmert. His comments from the podium and the private conversation with Tea Party activists are identical. He has not changed his message nor backed away from his beliefs. I just got one more story. Everyone here probably knows Dwayne Stovall?
Yeah.
And Dwayne Stovall obviously went for U.S. Senate last cycle, and there was talk that Representative Gohmert was going to seek that seat, and Dwayne posted that for an event. And Representative Gohmert didn't know Dwayne Madden. He's just a person. And he impressed, Dwayne impressed upon me how sincere and genuine Representative Gohmert was when he just said, hey, I'm not planning on running, and there's just no attitude, or just talking to him like a human being. So I was really impressed by that. Representative Gohmert has always unfortunately been on point for us in the Tea Party, and we are forever and will be eternally grateful for his work and faithful service to the cause of government and justice for all. I think it's wonderful that he serves Texas Congressional District #1. Thank you so much for all you do, Representative Gohmert.
You're very welcome. You earned it. Thank you.
So next up we have Heidi Hansing. She's from Clear Lake Tea Party.
That's a long walk. And I feel a little strange talking about you behind my back. But I want to continue with telling a story because I'm here to speak as a Tea Partier, and I'm on the executive board for Clear Lake Tea Party. And way back in the olden days when Republicans wanted to get Tea Party cred, you know, last year, they would come to the tea parties and we would vet them. And we were very earnest and thorough in our vetting of these congressional wannabes, these representative wannabes. In fact, there's plenty of Clear Lake Tea Party representatives in the room, and they can attest to this, because one of the questions we ask a congressional candidate is just to kind of check if he knows the lie of the land, if he's kind of plugged in on the issues and who the players are. We'll say, who would you ally with if you were to trick enough people into voting for you? That's how I think about it. But no, if you were to be elected and you went to Washington, D.C., who would you ally with? And we wanted to hear who would be their friends. Who is most closely aligned with them on the issues? Who do they see as the players? Who do they see as the leaders? And who do they see as someone that they will stand in the trenches with and fight? If they say Louie Gohmert, that's a good sign. They know that he's a fighter. They're prepared to sacrifice to stand next to him and fight with him. So that's good. We know that he's not afraid to do the right thing, and if they align themselves with him, they won't be afraid to do the right thing. However, if they don't say Congressman Louie Gohmert, red flag. Because now we know that they are not really clear on who the leaders are, especially if they're coming from the Texas delegation. So we know that they're not too informed. So right, Marion Dale Hulls, we take it upon ourselves to inform them of your record and of your stand. And we do so with enough confidence that is really rather uncommon. Because the Tea Party is not used to revering politicians, right?
You shouldn't.
Right. We don't get starstruck. We don't think of them as heroes or celebrities. We think of them as public servants there to do our will.
Exactly.
So we inform them, you need to get to know Louie Gohmert. You need to follow Louie Gohmert. You need to stand by Louie Gohmert. And you need to fight like Louie Gohmert. You didn't know we were saying all this about you.
That's not what I've heard this week.
They don't count. You're back home in Texas, darling. And then we tell these representative wannabes, we'll be watching you. We don't elect people and then send them off to Washington, D.C. anymore without any accountability. We'll be watching you always. I'm not exaggerating, am I? This is how we vet these candidates. And we also tell them, if they didn't happen to know who you were, and if they weren't yet prepared to make a decision, we have this with a current freshman who's there now, who voted present. We said, if you don't vote like Louie Gohmert when we send you to Washington, D.C., if you were to be sent to Washington, D.C., you're wrong. Now, where does this uncommon confidence come from, especially for a politician? I realized that this was rather uncommon, especially for the Clear Lake Tea Party. Like I said, we're Tea Party. We don't necessarily worship politicians.
And shouldn't.
Well, this comes from a very hard-won respect. Over 5 terms, you're entering your 6th now. And so far from what we've observed in what you've done for Texans, you've not caught the Potomac fever. Louie, you stand strong even if you stand alone. What's that?
As a Texan.
As a Texan, yeah. To use a military metaphor, because politics is commonly thought of as military strategy, military parlance, military verbiage, campaign strategy, tactics, war. We use all of this parlance when we're talking about politics. So when I was reflecting on what I wanted to say about Louie Gohmert, I saw a battlefield standard. And there is always a standard bearer. And in warfare, that standard bearer would be surrounded by what was traditionally called a color guard. And around the color guard, the infantry would be arrayed. And the standard bearer typically became a target. The standard bearer could go down, and somebody would have to snatch the flag. They didn't have to be told to snatch the flag. They would raise it, because the flag, above all of the smoke of the battlefield, when vision was obscured, you could see that standard. And the troops would know where to rally. They would know where to go and what to do, and they would know that they're still standing strong. So here we are on the battlefield of ideas. And when I think of Louie Gohmert, I think of a standard bearer. That you raise that standard so that we, the troops, and I think of your color guard as the Tea Party leaders that are in this room right now. Yes. That should that you raise that standard above the field of battle. It does take a toll. We understand that. We understand the cost. We understand the sacrifice. But we're your guard, and we'll be there for you. So there is an uncommon respect that I'm trying to express today. I believe, and I believe that you guys will agree with me when I say this, that Louie Gohmert is a national treasure. I do mean national treasure, and folks, I honestly and truly mean that in the Texan sense of the word.
There you go.
You're our standard bearer. The grassroots leaders are your color guard. And the Tea Party members are our infantry. You haven't dropped the standard yet. We believe you're one of us. We claim you as our own. And I want to just tell you one last thing before I close. When Washington, D.C. gets too yuck, as it did this week,
Amen.
I would recommend to you that you follow a little piece of advice from my hero, Davy Crockett. And you tell D.C., y'all can go to hell. I'm going home to Texas. Welcome home, Congressman.
You're right to goodness. You're right to goodness.
I mean it.
Thank you, Heidi. Very, very nice. Next up, we have Kelly Cannon from the Arlington Tea Party.
Oh, I could. That's tough act to follow.
Just telling Louie that's a tough act to follow. Very tough, but you had a few of us in tears over here. Name me. I brought my phone with me, not because I wanted to get a phone call, because later on I'm going to take my picture. First of all, I want to thank Maria and the Tea Party Patriots for inviting me to speak today, to offer testimony to our honorable Congressman Louie Gohmert. And when Maria explained to me what she wanted to do, first thing that crossed my mind was, oh my God, why me? What have I done that caught your attention enough to ask me to do this? I am, in contrast to what Heidi said, I'm one of the troops in the trenches. I don't even look at myself as leader. I look at myself as somebody who will go right down to the very front and do his bidding or anyone else's bidding that I feel is worth it.
Yes, you do.
Anyway, so I'm a foot soldier.
You and me.
And that's just what I do. And I look to those in leadership roles, and I follow. So you can imagine my excitement when I was asked to share my thoughts on one of those great leaders. There are millions of people like me in every walk of life. I'm just an architectural designer, you know. That's my day job. Gotta help those who really know the rest of my jobs. But when we woke up one day and found our country in trouble, we instinctively looked towards our leaders to help us through the turmoil. There are but a few leaders who really inspire us to the point where we will go that extra mile, knock that extra door, lick that extra stamp, work that extra day at the polls in the rain, and hold our breath that extra minute when the polls close. Did we do enough? Did we get our message across clear enough? Did we get that extra vote needed to get our candidate over the finish line? We look to those who lead us for that extra something, that extra ounce of inspiration, and we find it with Louie Gohmert. He is an inspiration to all. Oh, but I'm not done. Good. I am an 8th generation Texan, and I take that very seriously. My very first experience with the Tea Party in general, was with all of us in 2009. And I don't know how many people remember. I know I do. The very first time we saw Santilli on the floor of the Chicago Exchange, having an absolute temper fit. All right?
Yeah.
We need to start a tea party, and that was it. That's all it took. It was organic. It amazed me. I was absolutely stunned, as was the entire country, that we had just elected who we just elected. Not me, though. But my first really significant Tea Party experience was on September the 12th, 2009. I went all by myself to D.C., traveled there solo on my own dime, and ended up in Washington, where I was joined by 1.2 million other Tea Party patriots. And that's when I knew something special was going on. There I was walking down Pennsylvania Avenue, me. And I had a little sign that said, "Born free, taxed to death." Made it myself in the hotel lobby of one of the hotels there the night before, as did 1.2 million other Tea Party patriots. It was the most incredible experience I'll ever have. And that's where I first heard, for instance, Jenny Beth Martin. She stood there on the steps of the west steps of the Capitol and gave the most rousing speech I think I've ever heard. And she was just like me, or you, or anyone else in this room. But she decided to step up and do what it took to get enough other people to also stand up like myself, like Louie. But Louie, in contrast, was, I think, who Jenny Beth was looking up to at the time. I know I was. But anyway, that speech that Jenny Beth gave, I'm saying to myself, wow, I want to be her. I want to do what she's doing. I want to make a difference. That was it. I was hooked. So much so I went back the next year. And that's where I met Louie for the very first time. I don't know if you remember this, but we were on the very steps of the west part of the Capitol.
Right. You
were down there talking to a bunch of us. And the first thing that caught my attention was your Aggie ring. And I showed you mine. And we had that instant camaraderie that only Aggies understand. And so for the next few years, I followed your work and your leadership, not only in the Tea Party movement, but also in Congress. And you have been an unwavering example of what it means to step up, to fight the good fight, no matter the odds. It is indeed an honor to stand here today and personally give testimony to the amazing leadership he has shown each of us in the Tea Party community. I also come here as a messenger for the Tea Party leaders in my neck of the woods, North Texas. Here's what they have to say. I've got 4 quotes. First up, Ray Myers, president of the Kaufman County, who is in your district, Louie.
Well, just outside, just right outside.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's just outside.
My bad.
We feel like we're together.
They've adopted you. Okay, they have adopted you.
And I've adopted them.
Anyway, Ray says, thank you for standing strong in the face of the establishment. Your courage is appreciated by your fellow grassroots Texans. God bless. And then from my dear friend and grassroots patriot, Michael Berryman Smith, founder of the Texas Grassroots Conservative Activist Group. That's a mouthful. He begins with a quote from Stephen F. Austin, who once said, "If he who by conquest wins an empire and receives the world's applause, how much more is due to those who, by unceasing toil, lay in the wilderness the foundation of an infant colony, and build thereon a vigorous, happy state. Surely there is not among men a more honorable destiny than to be the peaceful founder and builder of a new empire." I'm almost done. I'll go quicker. Michael continues, though I reside in CD 12, as a Tea Party activist, I have gazed upon the wonder upon the principles and character of the Herculean strength Representative Gohmert has exhibited. We find ourselves precisely in a situation of having to rebuild our foundation, which is cracked nearly beyond repair. It's during these times under which we now labor that America is in dire need of more men and women that will stand in the cause of liberty, limited government, and a firm moral foundation like that of Louie Gohmert. End quote. Josh Finkenbinder, my friend and president of the Arlington and Lone Star Tea Party, says the following, very short and sweet. Politicians calculate their decisions based on what is popular among other politicians. Statesmen, however, make decisions based on principles of what is right or wrong. Congressman Gohmert, you are a statesman. Yes. My friend and Tea Party colleague, Julie White McCarty, president of the Northeast Tarrant Tea Party, wrote the following on Facebook just a few hours before the speaker vote, where Louie had so gallantly joined the ranks. She says, Texas State House representatives could learn a lot from Congressman Louie Gohmert regarding his bid for Speaker of the House. Here's what he said, and she's quoting you. It seemed clear that we needed a new leadership. There had been much discussion, but until yesterday, no one had stepped up, end quote. See, that's how it's done, she continued. You don't like your choices, so you step up yourself. You don't give up and start shilling for the incumbent that everyone agrees needs to be replaced. 3 cheers for Louie Gohmert.
Here, here.
He may not win, but at least he didn't cave. He came up with a solution. That's a man of integrity that we can all admire and respect. Like I said, lots of lessons to learn here. End quote.
Thank you.
And now, what am I going to say? After all those quotes and the very esteemed people before me, people often ask for help from other people, and they turn to anyone who's listening, and they post it on Facebook or Twitter or what have you. And whatever the help is, I've often said, if I can do it, I'll often say to them what Val Kilmer said as Doc Holliday in the movie Tombstone. He was Wyatt Earp's best friend, and he had his back. He was loyal to the end, and he never questioned what Wyatt needed of him. So, in closing, all I want to say, I'm your huckleberry. And we're all your huckleberry. And if you need us, we're here. God bless you. Remember.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We just over the time. Thank you.
You're my inspiration.
Thank you.
We'll welcome our speakers back up on the stage here. And Maria, if you could come join us. Now, obviously, we could have had every one of you come up and give some great remarks. Maria had identified some Tea Party leaders that she felt would represent, I think, the feelings that are in this entire room. And so, Maria, would you like to, well, Jenny Beth, if you want to take a couple minutes.
Let me just, Louie, I'm sure that I met him actually before the final vote on the healthcare legislation. I got to know Louie during the final vote on the healthcare legislation. He and I were emailing back and forth as we're preparing for this almost impromptu rally on the west lawn of the Capitol, where we had 50,000 people show up this Saturday before the final vote on Sunday. And actually, I emailed you and I said, now tell me, what do you look like? Because I want to make sure I recognize you. He's laughing because he remembers what he said. He told me he looks just like Brad Pitt, just a little bit more bald with a little bigger nose. And I knew this was a man I was going to like. And I saw him and I said, you do look just like Brad Pitt. So he helped me out tremendously as we were getting members of Congress to speak and making sure that we had the information to convey to the people who were at that rally and then around the country. I have stood with Louie and I've been in his office, and he's one of my group of people that I email with in the middle of the night because we don't seem to sleep very much at all because we're so concerned about the country and how we're going to fight the battles. And I've watched him as he goes through and he's looking at bills and he's reading the bills and he reads the bills. He pays attention to what's in them. He actually reads the bills. And he will say, Jenny Beth, I can't do it. Look at what it says here. Look at what it says. And I've watched him as he says, I have no idea how anyone else is going to vote at all, but I cannot do this because it is not right. That is the kind of person that we need in Washington. We need people who are looking at their principles, not looking at what everyone else is doing, but using the founding principles and being so steeped in those that that's the guiding principle that makes their decisions for votes. And we're so fortunate that we have Louie Gohmert in Congress. He is a leader. He's leading us. He's helping us see what we need for our country. And I'm just so glad that they're doing this for you today. And Louie, they planned this in November. They didn't know it was going to be such a rough week this week. This we planned in November for you. So you had no idea that this would be happening. They had no idea that you would be doing what you did this week. And we just appreciate you so much. Thank you, Louie.
Thank you. Then you could be speaker.
Don't cry.
You inspired me when you came to meet the local coordinators in Washington, D.C., and I said it is time for us to honor and give back to Congressman Gohmert. So everybody in the room signed our flag for you.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you to our speakers, and what a great message they have.
Guys, going to speak?
Yeah, so
Well,
you guys are free to go sit down. That's great.
thank you so
I'm going
much.
to take the short steps.
Thank you.
I don't trust that long stuff.
So
Well, thank you all.
we did leave some time for you to be able to speak, because we definitely want to hear from you. But it's fantastic. You can always measure a man by his friends, and I think as Tea Party leaders and local coordinators, you folks are excellent. But you also can measure who you are by your friends as well. Congressman, we appreciate what you do, and look forward to speaking with you.
Oh, thank you.
But I think you got to be careful, because I think these guys will still kind of keep your feet to the fire.
Count on it.
That's good.
I count on it.
So stay on track.
You got that. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Well, I won't give you all my notes here. Time's short. But, well, it's interesting. And when I was a sophomore in high school, and I stayed with a friend back here, John Ellis, he and his wife Jane, we all grew up together in Mount Pleasant, Texas. And anyway, when I was a sophomore, John wasn't in that speech class, but we were all required to enter the Optimist Club oratorical contest. I didn't want to. I didn't think that was necessary. I didn't think we should be shoved into something like that we didn't want to do, but it was an assignment. And there were about 30 of us at the Optimist Club. Like I say, I'm a sophomore in high school. And I was so nervous. And I was afraid everybody around me could hear my heartbeat, because it just felt like my heart was about to come out of my chest. And anyway, but I had a message on my heart, and as strong as it was beating, I got up and gave it. And afterwards, before they announced the winners, I was just so upset with myself. Why did I let my heart beat that fast? That was just stupid. And anyway, I prayed, Lord, I know this is stupid, it's wasted energy. Would you just please help me not get nervous like this? And from that day to this day, whether I'm speaking to, whether it's 100,000 people or millions on TV or what, or 2 people, I just don't get nervous. I haven't. And I really wondered if when I got to Congress and was doing more TV and stuff, if that would change. It hadn't changed. But I am immensely uncomfortable today. I didn't expect to be uncomfortable. I expected to get up and my wife says, you are so bad about taking compliments. You always, just brush things off. And I said, well, because I'm uncomfortable. And she said, you need to learn to just say thank you. And anyway, so I'm working on that. But I'm very uncomfortable, and I don't have trouble figuring out what to do with my hands. But I'm sitting up here wondering, what do I do with my hands? And this is crazy. But, I don't push my religious beliefs on anybody else, but it's part of who I am. And a friend named Stephen Curtis Chapman, he didn't even know me at the time, but he wrote about me when he said, if the truth were known and a light were shone on every hidden part of my soul, most would turn away, shake their heads and say, he's still got such a long way to go. If the truth were known, you'd see that the only good in me is Jesus. And that's where I am. So, it has been a battle this week. And I want you, I mean, you've been so complimentary and so uplifting, and that's really needed and helpful right now. And I would submit to you, this had to be a God thing, to have been planning this since November, really? Is that really right? In November, I did not expect to be where we were this week. Because in November, I mean, y'all may not remember, but November 2 years ago, I was trying to find somebody that I could nominate for speaker. And the people that I felt like had a chance to beat the current speaker would say, Louie, if you nominate me, I'm going to stand up right after you do and withdraw my name. You know, I'm going to be able to do a lot of good as a chairman of this or on this committee, and if you try to do that to me, you jeopardize what I'm going to be able to do this year. Well, I didn't want to mess them up, and they're trying to do what's right. And there were some of us that talked about, you know, maybe we could do a motion in second, because there were a lot of people that had seen the broken promises that had been made and broken over and over again, starting with the pledge before the election in 2010. I didn't write it, but I honored what the minority leader, Boehner, asked us to do, and I took it, because I agreed with the things in there. I didn't think they were bold enough. And then right off the bat, we started breaking everything in that pledge. And it was as frustrating as could be to me. Because we said, if you give us the majority, here are the things we're going to do. And it wasn't a contract, it wasn't that strong. But I take pledges pretty strongly myself, just like you do. And I knew we'd had 2 years and we hadn't kept our pledges. And you don't make a lot of friends when you stand up in your conference, say, let me read to you what you had us pledge, that you pledged yourself. And we've already broken that one, but why don't we try to keep this next one, because that's what's up for vote now. You don't make a lot of friends doing those kind of things, but in November 2 years ago, I just thought, well, I hadn't got anybody that I think could win that I could nominate, because there were a number of us that had been meeting and talking about it back then. And then the night before, I thought, you know what? It's never happened before, but you don't have to be a member of Congress to be a speaker. So I emailed Newt Gingrich and I said, you know, you helped get us, you were the leading force in helping us get the majority after 40 years, and you don't have to be a member of Congress to be speaker. I'd like to nominate you at our conference tomorrow. And pretty quickly he came back with 2 words: that's impractical. And my reaction was, all right, he didn't say no. So anyway, so the next day, right before we went in, my last chance for somebody that would say for sure I'll second your nomination, said I can't do it. So I went in, I was sitting on the aisle about 2/3 of the way back and listening to the speeches that, you know, John Boehner got us to speak the majority single-handedly, and if the Senate had him, then they would have the majority. And I realized, you know, we got all these new freshmen in, and they don't know the history of broken promises. There'll be no other way to convey this. They won't believe me, but maybe if I lay out the chronology of broken promises and failed leadership as they start happening this year, as I knew they would, then we'll have a chance, and maybe it won't take them several years to realize, wait a minute, we hadn't kept any of these promises we made. So I went ahead and after the nomination and the seconds and all, I was, Lord, and this wasn't like some of the prayers that got prayed this week, and I'm wondering about them. But anyway, it was just, I've been praying for wisdom since I was 6 years old, and God says, you ask for it, I'll give it, but He doesn't say when. That's the problem. And so I've been praying for over 50 years, and I know one of these days I'm going to get some. But you keep praying, so you can help me by praying for that for me. I don't need prayers for courage. That is not a need of mine. But sometimes when you're not afraid of anybody or anything, then that's how you get derailed, is you have everybody wanting you to fight their cause because they know you'll stand up and fight. And there are so many righteous causes, and you really need wisdom to pick your fights. And that's, if you're fighting every time, then you marginalize your ability to make a difference. So that's where I need wisdom and not courage. But I went ahead and stood up and, you know what? You got 3 minutes to lay out as much chronology as you can. And I waited until the very end of the nomination to say who I was nominating, because I knew if I said that up front, then people would quit paying attention. By the way, this is not anything that I plan to get into today, but things changed here. But anyway, so I laid out the facts, starting with in the first of the year, 2006, we had to elect a new majority leader to finish the second of the 2-year term of Tom DeLay, who had to step down because he was indicted. And the reason he was indicted from a practical standpoint was we had changed the rule the year before because it was a stupid rule we had that said if you get indicted and you're in leadership in the Republican Party in Congress, you immediately automatically are out as a leader. And we changed that appropriately. As a former prosecutor and judge and chief justice, I knew that was stupid, because that means you're turning over the authority to decide Republican leadership to any Democratic hack that was a DA in the country, and that you just can't do that. So we had changed it to a better rule, which is much closer to what the Democrats ruled. They didn't have that rule. And that was that if somebody was indicted in Republican leadership, then the other leaders had 30 days to fully investigate, come back, give a report, and make a recommendation to the whole conference, and then we'd vote on it. That was a good rule. But some people, and I don't know all the names, I know people that stood up and fought against fixing the rule as we ultimately did. They wanted you immediately removed, and it was a nasty conference. But anyway, lo and behold, those same people apparently kept complaining during that year, and by September, the speaker stood up and said, we need to change the rule back because a lot of you are really upset. You say you're getting a lot of heat. And so we changed the rule back. Shortly before that, Ronnie Earl here in Austin, Texas, he had taken it before 4 or 5 grand juries. They kept saying there's no crime here. And he had said Tom DeLay's not a target. Tom DeLay hasn't done anything wrong. And we changed the rule back, and immediately he starts getting pressure from what I'd heard from Democratic friends. People saying, we don't care if you can convict him, indict him, he's gone forever. We don't have to worry about him anymore. And so some of us fought it, but they changed the rule back. And so then he got indicted, and when he got indicted, it turned out they indicted him for a law that didn't exist when he was raising the money they said created the crime. When they realized that, a new grand jury was coming in a few days later, so before they even had time to go through orientation, from what I'd read, they rushed this through and said, we need to redo this indictment, and so the new grand jury signed off on it, and it destroyed 9 years of Tom DeLay's life. And ultimately I knew, because I knew the law, if he did anything wrong, it wasn't money laundering. You can't take legal money that you've raised legally and allegedly dirty it up and call that money laundering. Money laundering is when you take dirty money and clean it. So anyway, so as a result, gee, we needed a new leader. And there were 3 guys running, and one of them was John Boehner, I didn't know much about. I knew that as the chairman of Education Committee, President Bush said he was indispensable in helping get that great legislation through Congress that we know as No Child Left Behind, that he and Ted Kennedy really made a difference. Without them, not sure they could have gotten it done. So I didn't vote for John Boehner on the first ballot, but on the second ballot, he said something that intrigued me, and that was, look, this is an ideal situation. Many of you don't know how good a leader I will be, so this is perfect. You got a test run here. You vote for me now, here the 1st of 2006, and if I'm not the best leader you could have ever had, then in November, after the election, you'll have a chance to throw me out and get somebody else. This is my test run. Well, for those that don't remember November of 2006 like I do, it was a gut punch. And as many of us were just breathless, it just felt sick to our stomachs as we thought about the philosophies of the people that would have the gavels, you know, and be just running the country. We were just sick, except for one guy. He was on the phone all that night calling, saying, hey, this wasn't fair. I didn't get the full 2 years. You can't throw me out now. I didn't have enough time. I'm going, but you said this was your test run, and it didn't work out well. Oh, well, this isn't fair. And he convinced a majority to give him another 2 years now as the top leader. And if you have forgotten about 2008, November, it didn't go very well either. We didn't have good leadership. And in 2010, I know people keep giving him the credit, but we did not earn the majority in 2010. The polls all showed that. We got the majority because of what the Democrats did, not because of anything the Republicans did. And if you go back and look at the strategy of our minority leader Boehner, there were some material, massive mistakes. And I won't get into the motion to recommit. Really, they had a choice, and that's what a motion after a bill is brought up. And this was the first time we voted on Obamacare. But you try to get something that the other side will be afraid to vote against. And so we were proposing, some of us just one, but they were considering one of 2 motions recommit. One was tort reform of some kind on there. Well, I thought that's kind of stupid. You're not going to get any Democrats to vote for tort reform. So that's a stupid one. And the other was to make clear that no person illegally in the United States could ever get Obamacare. And the Hispanic caucus, 22 people, had said if the Republicans make that as an amendment and it passes, we're all voting against Obamacare. It would have failed if we had made a motion to recommit and said no people illegally here get Obamacare. So they chose to recommit on tort reform. Democrats did not vote for it. And so after that vote, I was sitting on the floor with a dear friend, Scott Garrett, brilliant guy from New Jersey, but just a terrific conservative. And it really, he's more quiet, but he's a real thinker. And he and I were just really mourning and couldn't believe that we didn't have the right motion to recommit. And one of the Democratic leaders walked by. Most people had left the floor. There were just a few of us there. And said, well, you got to be feeling pretty good. And he said, yeah, you had us worried. There were some things you might have done that could have really created problems for us. And I said, yeah, like a motion to recommit to keep people illegally here from getting Obamacare, and he stopped and he said, yeah, we didn't know what we were going to do if that's your motion. So, I mean, leadership, things like that. And then we had a miracle in Massachusetts. The Democrat didn't win. And everybody was saying that's the end of them being able to pass Obamacare. That's it, it's over. So our speaker decided, you know what would be a good idea? Some say, well, it was this leader's idea, that leader's idea. Well, nobody would have done it without his approval. We decided to invite the president to our conference to talk about Obamacare. It was dead. Everybody said, it's over, it won't happen. It was a terrible mistake to invite him to our conference. But he came, and guess what? I know you'd never guess, the media portrayed him as coming into the lion's den and taming the lions. Wow, what a shock. Is there anybody here that wouldn't have figured that's what was going to happen? And it reawakened Obamacare. It gave it new life. I mean, the failed decisions of the current leadership have been disastrous for this country. And knowing that, and knowing how hard I tried, we came within 2 hours 2 years ago of being able to remove the speaker. We had 21 votes, and as it turned out, we only needed 16. And that's a whole nother story, and I don't have time to get into it. But 2 hours before they finished getting enough folks that we ended up with like 9 people voted for someone else. And 5 people voted present, but that doesn't really count. November we get this much bigger majority, we get the Senate, and some people think I'm lying that this was the plot and plan, what we did all along. It wasn't. And I sat there in conference, and I don't care what they say about it being unanimous, it was not. They made a motion to elect him acclamation or unanimous, and I was sitting at the back and I was talking to somebody else, and I just didn't even open my mouth. I'd been fighting this battle. They were on the trail, and Speaker Boehner was saying all the right things. Now, maybe he really has learned his lesson. I mean, because we got no chance of taking him out. And so we didn't, you know, there were, I think 3 people said no. And I really was going to give him the chance. And then along came the omnibus with a CR with it. And the way that was done, and him having to get Obama to lobby for him to get those votes, you know, it was too much. It was just too much. And I know people say, well, you should have done that in November. You should have followed the rules. And just, let me tell you, when people say that, I followed the rules. We followed the rules. There were 7 of us that started talking by phone after Christmas, and we all realized we have got to try. And so we were doing what we did 2 years ago, calling people and saying, we need you to get on board. Because we have a bigger majority, it's going to take not 16 like 2 years ago, it's going to take 29. And vote for anybody, doesn't matter. Anybody. An adult American citizen is eligible. Anybody. If you vote present, then it lowers the total number that you need to get to win the speakership. And we weren't making a lot of progress. We knew we had 7 solid. But then we, Friday night of last week, 8 days ago, Jim Bridenstine and Thomas Massey called me, and they said, and we were comparing notes, who we were calling, who we were talking to, and they said, look, we're about to have a repeat of last year, because, and Thomas is a young guy, and he went to something called MIT, and he's elected from Kentucky. He's one of the greatest conservatives and most intelligent people you run into. But I love the way he's got the Southern way of talking, so he's just awesome. And Jim Bridenstine from Oklahoma, just so solid, so solid. F-18 pilot, I mean, the guy's terrific. And Thomas says, Louie, Jim and I have been talking, we're going to have the same thing happen, but Jim is a genius. He had a brilliant idea, and Jim said, well, hold it, I want to savor this. Thomas Massey, the genius from MIT, is saying that I'm a genius, and I had this brilliant stroke of genius. So anyway, he said, yeah, they said, we have got to have somebody commit publicly that they're running, because what we keep running into is what we did 2 years ago, people saying, nobody is announced candidate, you can't beat somebody with nobody, and until somebody announces as a candidate, I'm not voting for anybody but the speaker, because it's hopeless. We need somebody to announce, and you're the only one that could get enough media attention to make it count. And I said, guys, thank you, but I don't think you get it. You need to go on the internet and look what is being said about me. Crazy. And I know, I was in the honors program at A&M. I won awards for all kinds of things at law school. I'm very comfortable with my intelligence, despite what you may read. My dear friends Steve King and Scott Garrett, they'll call and say, you remember details of how this happened and why it happened. And sometimes I wish I didn't, you know, because we keep doing these things. And so, anyway, I said, guys, if I go out and announce, then you're going to have a combination coalition, the establishment in the front, and even the Obama administration with all its assets in the media. The election will go from the failed leadership of the current speaker to how crazy Louie Gohmert is, and that hurts our cause. And they said, no, but we have got to have somebody announce, so they can't keep using that excuse, there's no other choice. And you'll take that away, and you'll get enough media attention that it'll give it a chance. And I said, guys, you know, if I announce, I would be the last person that our conference would elect, because they'd be so mad about it. You know, we understand. But, and Thomas put this so well, he said, look, most members of Congress want to get the money that Boehner can raise for them. They want to get the committee of choice. They want to be chairman, and they can't do it if they oppose him. But they'll have all their constituents say, vote for somebody else. And 2 years ago, and now, right now where we are, 8 days ago, they're able to say, well, I agree with you. I don't want to vote for Boehner, but there's no other candidate, and since nobody's announced, that way they get a good excuse to their constituents, and they get to keep getting the speaker's money and the committee and chairmanships, and you've got to break that. And I said, guys, you know the firestorm from our own conference. They go, yeah, but you're the only one that could do it. And so I said, let's have a conference call with all 7 in the morning, and we did. And I hadn't talked about this before, and I'm over my time. Is it okay if I finish? Okay.
5 more minutes.
Okay. So, well, I would be being more succinct if any of this was on my outline for today, but it's not. So the next morning, you know, I'd thought about it, and I'm not ashamed to say I'd prayed about it, but and I thought, you know, they've got a point. As Thomas said, you can guys, and they'll let you on. We can't do that. And Fox will put you on, and they're really wonderful. If they're really something I need to get out, they'll usually figure, well, then it must be important, we'll let him on. And so I said, guys, it's still a problem. I don't mind going out, but what has occurred to me is the only way around this is if somebody else announces before I do. Because if somebody will announce before I do, then it's not about crazy Louie Gohmert. It's about, gee, there are multiple people out there, and then it will really have some resonance because they'll be able to see it is true. It isn't about crazy Gohmert, it's about the speaker's failed leadership, and we can keep that on. And they're going, well, you know, who else would it? And a real patriot, and you got to understand, you can disagree on a piece of legislation. That is pastor in Mount Pleasant, Texas said back the year I was born, my parents told me he used to say this, if everybody agrees on everything, then all but one's unnecessary. But it's good to get each other's thoughts. That's what Congress is supposed to do, and then come together and debate it, fight it, and there are disagreements on things. And Ted and I have had disagreements, but Ted Yoho is a real patriot. And Ted said, look, most of the country doesn't know who I am, but if it'll help give you cover and help get us to get America to focus on the real issue, failed leadership, then I will announce. And so there were a number of other conversations that Saturday, and then Ted issued a press release. Breitbart and Drudge and others got it up. Hey, somebody has announced, Ted Yoho from Florida has announced, and he's a big old guy. He's a veterinarian, and he's dealt with both ends of horses. He knows what he's doing. So he announced, and then we had contacted Fox News and asked if I could come on and make an announcement. And they said, yeah, great, 6:15 Central Time. And I said, you know, see if they can't give me a later time. And my staff was saying, no, but if you do it that early, then it'll play through the day. So we did it early. It got out there, and Dan Webster kept toying with getting out there. Now, his conservative scorecard's not nearly like mine, but he is an honest, decent leader, the first Speaker of the House in Florida. And even though his record is not nearly as conservative as mine, he is my Christian brother, and I'm telling you, he's an honest, honorable man. And I could have voted for him for Speaker. And I thought he would be a good alternative when, if we could get the 29 votes that threw it to a second ballot. And so when people say, well, what would you do if you were Speaker after I announced? Well, listen, I've got some good ideas, but I'm just telling you as a student of history, and I still am a student of history, the only way a guy like me could ever get elected to be Speaker would be as if we were during a time of all-out war and people have figured, wow, Louie's been right all along, and maybe we should give him a chance. That's we're not going to elect me in a time of undeclared war. That's not. And I know that, and I understood that. And I understood that I didn't realize quite how deep some of the animus would go as it has this week, but I knew people would be upset with me, and they are. But for those people who have told me to my face and others publicly that this was stupid, we should have done it in November, we shouldn't have been breaking the rules, we did not break a single rule. Now, the fact that for 226 years of our history, no one has ever nominated somebody besides the party one choice, it doesn't mean you break the rules when you did that. And it appeared to me we could do it under the current rules. And we ran it by the parliamentarian, and they go, well, nobody has ever done that, but the rule, you can do that. We did not break a rule, not one. And for those who said you should have done it in November, let me tell you, maybe we should, but it wouldn't have gone anywhere because the Speaker controls the timing of that election. And this Speaker, he is smart about the things he sets in place to keep him in position. That election comes so fast after the November general election, there is no time to mount a serious challenge to a sitting Speaker, and especially not this one, who's so good about setting rules that keep him where he is. So we didn't violate any rules. We did what he does, and that's use the rules to his advantage. And it wasn't my idea to do a nominating speech, but when one of the other guys suggested, I said, that is a good idea. And so for 226 years, for the 114th time, the clerk said after one party nominated its one person and the Democrats nominated their one person, and the clerk for the 114th time said, are there any other nominations? That's part of the rules. The clerk has to say that. But 113 of those 114 times, nobody said anything. But that was different this year, wasn't it? So we followed the rules. And guess what? We had a great conference yesterday. And we're talking about the things that need to be in the bill we're going to take up on Homeland Security on Tuesday. And I had not been able to say, and people were getting mad, I couldn't say that I would vote for the bill, even though I agreed with everything that was espoused as the principles. Is I got to read the bill. Show me the bill, and then I'll be able to do it. So anyway, I got the bill about 1 a.m. last night, and I hadn't had a chance to read it because I hadn't had over 2 hours sleeping night this week, and I just needed the 5 I got last night. So, but I will read it this weekend, and I really anticipate being able to vote for it. The problem is we gave away all our leverage in the omnibus. We funded everything else. And so I want to make a suggestion, and please don't use my name when you suggest this to your members of Congress, because they'll immediately turn you off. There's a lot of anger right now. But you suggest this. This is the way things get done. You keep planting the seeds. You tell your representatives, you need to demand that your conference sit down in the retreat next week and make a list of what you believe President Obama cares about more than anything else. And make a list of what Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi care about more than anything else. EPA probably is in there somewhere. You make a list of those things, and those are the things you don't fund and you leave to deal with because they have got to have those passed. How do you think this negotiation is going to play out with the president? The president will be able to say, all right, let me get this right. If I don't sign this bill that eliminates the amnesty I gave, then you're not going to fund the Border Patrol or anybody to protect America. Okay. All right. I'll take that there. You don't take a hostage they want you to shoot, you know? So anyway, please encourage your members to do that. And let me just say thank you. I think it's a God thing for this to happen. I'm still very uncomfortable that you did it, but I will take the advice of my wife and just finish by saying thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Crazy Louie 2017.